This morning, I raised the amount of feed that these animals are getting from 14 buckets up to 16 buckets. And so I've been running my numbers, and I know that a long time ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I actually said that if you, well, I mean, I know I've been saying this a lot recently because I've been changing up their food. And I've been talking about the metrics that I'm looking at, or what am I looking to accomplish, and things like that. And I've been saying that I'm gonna put these animals on a total mixed ration, and that total mixed ration is gonna be about a 0.49 NEG. And I was looking into it, and 0.49 NEG is kind of like the perfect ratio for what I need. These animals, right? You know, I need to put on whatever. I need to put on about 3 pounds a day, and I don't really want to be in a situation where I want to be, you know, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm like having to exactly measure everything. I don't want to be in a situation where it's like if I accidentally overfeed an animal by 0.5% of their body weight, then they bloat to death. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm mixing ionophores into their feed, you know, 5 grams per tonnage. I don't want to be in that situation. And so, you know, if I have a total mixed ration that is a 0.49 NEG, then I can feed about 3% of their body weight a day. And then if I feed 3% of their body weight a day, and as I put them on the feed, I'm going to keep a real good eye on them to make sure they're not having acidosis, to make sure they're not bloating, to make sure that they're not having diarrhea, etc., etc. And I really want to get to a point where I'm feeding about 20 buckets a day. And the whole idea is that when these animals, when they get put on feed, they're going to eat about 3% of their body weight a day, right? They're going to eat about 3.25% of their body weight a day. If you include moisture, I mean, maybe we're talking about 3.5, 3.75. When I say 3.25, I'm talking about dry matter, right? I'm talking about dry matter. And the reason that I use the metric dry matter, the reason that people use the metric dry matter is because when you feed different types of feed, they're going to have different levels of moisture. So you got to really look at the dry matter. And so, you know, I'm looking to feed these animals about whatever, maybe about 3.75% of their body weight a day. And so I take a look at how much feed they're getting. They also have access to a little bit of grass, right? They also have a little bit of grass. I mean, the grass is maybe 2 inches tall and is not growing anymore because of the weather. But I mean, they'll still go back there and they'll still kind of chew on it for fun. And so, I mean, maybe they get about 0.25% of their body weight a day in grass, and then the rest of it they get in feed. So, and they also ate up the entire hay bale. And so I took a look at how much feed am I giving these animals. I took the entirety of the feed, so I'm feeding about, this morning I raised the amount of feed that they're getting from 14 buckets to 16 buckets. So now I'm giving them 16 buckets of feed. Each bucket of feed weighs about 32.5 pounds. If I take that number, so if I take 16 and I multiply it by 32.5, I take that number and then I divide it by 33, which is the number of animals that I have, then I will get the average weight of my herd. And so the average weight of my herd, according to that calculation right now, is about 521 pounds. It's somewhere around 520 pounds. And I really want to get my animals to a point where they're eating about 20 buckets a day. And once they're eating about 20 buckets a day, I will take the biggest animals and then I will liquidate the biggest animals. And then I will bring in the smaller animals, right? I bring them in at about 200. I'm not saying I bring them in at exactly 200, but almost all the time I will end up bringing home an animal between about 150 and 250 pounds. All right, almost all the time. So you know, if I stick to the plan, almost always I'll end up selling an 850 pound animal. Well, not, you know, but the market weight depends on my business plan, right? What am I looking to accomplish? Do I want to sell them at 650? If I sell them at 650, what does my margin look like? What does the commodity market look like, right? I've always said that, you know, I take a look at different commodity market metrics as well, right? The feeder cattle market and the corn market and the price of urea. You know, I take a look at these different metrics and then I determine what should I do for my business. And so almost always when I sell these animals at 800, 850 and I want to stick to the plan, almost always I'll bring them home at about 150, 250, something like that, about 200 pounds. And so if I bring them home at 200 and, you know, one 800 pound animal will eat about as much as 4 200 pound animals. So if I want to reduce the amount of feed that my herd is getting, then I'm going to sell my biggest animals and I'm going to bring in the small ones. That will reduce the amount of feed that my animals are eating. You know, I know now I have deemed that my herd is not appreciating profitably anymore. So I'm going to take my animals, I'm going to take my biggest animals, and I'm going to sell them, and I'm going to bring in some small ones. I'm going to bring in small ones instead. So, and then that will reduce my, you know, that will keep my business profitable at a degree that I believe is reasonable. And so, you know, when I take a look at the metrics and I take a look at what I'm doing, you know, I take a look at it and I just consider it for what it is. I take a look at things objectively, right? I take a look at things for what they are. You don't want to be in a situation where you're like, oh my God, I was born with the answer, and I fell out of heaven at 7, and now I'm going to go on a mystical, magical journey. And when I go on a mystical, magical journey, everything's going to work out for me in a magical fashion. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in a situation where you look at it for what it is and you determine what to do. You have to come up with a good idea. If I feed 3% of their body weight a day and they have access to a little bit of grass, if I feed about 3.25% of their body weight a day in this total mixed ration, and the total mixed ration is a 0.49 NEG, you know, from the beginning, when I first put them on the feed, I'm going to give them a bale of hay, and I'm going to give them 12 buckets of feed, and then I'm going to slowly start increasing the amount of feed that they're getting while I observe the animals and to diagnose acidosis should it be happening. Right? That's the kind of stuff that you need to be doing. That's the kind of stuff that I do. And here's the thing about my business, all right? You know, and I talk about this all the time, and I know that this is not going to be exactly the most politically correct thing, but I'm just going to say it because it's the honest truth, and this is what I believe. If you watch somebody right now, like, you probably don't understand this, but I always say that one of the most important things that you can learn how to do in business is to consider how much money is involved. It does not matter what farm you're looking at. It does not matter what business you're looking at. You should be able to consider how much money is involved. And here's a very good example. If you're watching somebody right now, right, I say, you know, if you go on YouTube right now and you look up a variety of farmers, you're going to see a bunch of them. If you see somebody right now and they got you know, they got 100 animals, right? I mean, they got their little 250 acre farm, and they got their 100 animals, and their 100 animals, when you take a look at the quality of their cattle and what kind of cattle they're bringing in, they're bringing in straight number 1 type cattle, right? They got a long string of straight number 1, maybe even 1+ type cattle. Right? I mean, maybe we're talking about over the market average 1+ type cattle. Maybe they're bringing in these long strings of number 1 to 1+ type cattle. They got 100 of them. They're on a 250 acre field. They're growing corn. They got a combine. They got an 18-wheeler. They got a big old grain bin. They got a big old feed grinder. And then they got these animals in captivity, and they got these animals under a barn, and then they're just feeding these animals straight every single day, all the time. Right, you know, and I'm not saying this to, you know, put shade on anybody. I'm just saying this I'm just going to be honest about it. I'm just going to give you the real life, you know, that this is what it is. That person is actually closer to being homeless than they are to making as much money as me. You know, I run just as many animals on a 10.5 acre field. All right, you know, I don't have any equipment other than my tractor. I have very, very, very minimal equipment. I don't have a combine. I don't have a feed grinder. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't even bring in straight number 1 type cattle. I go and hand pick my cattle one at a time. I don't bring in long strings of cattle. You know, I don't go and buy a long string of number 1 type cattle. I go and I hand pick my animals one at a time. And I determine on each single animal, can I make money on this animal? All right, and if you actually take a look at it, that person is actually closer to being homeless than they are to making as much money as me. And I'm just going to say that that's just information. I'm just going to leave that there. You can do whatever you want with it. All right, when you take a look at me, I made it into the top 0.00001% of the entire U.S. economy running a commercial cattle farm on 10.5 acres. The money just is what it is, and the money talks. All right, it just is what it is. This field right here will make me somewhere around $75,000 and $100,000 over the next 5 months. I will make about $75,000, $100,000 on this field over the next 5 months. All right, it just is what it is. Like, I don't know what else. I don't, you know, and I'm not doing this to, you know, I'm just giving you the honest truth. All right, this person, like, if you're watching somebody and they run just as many cattle as me, they have 100 cattle, they run about 100 cattle a year, they're bringing in straight long strings of number 1 to 1+ type. They probably bought the whole bunch as a complete lot. They, you know, and whatever, right? They bought the whole bunch of them, you know, they bought the whole bunch of them. Now they got this entire string of number 1 to 1+ type cattle, right? And they got a combine, they got a grain bin, they got a feed grinder, they got an 18-wheeler, they got a tractor that looks like a tank, and then they got 250 acres of corn, and then they got a little captivity barn where they keep their 100 cattle, and then they just feed these cattle all year round. And their goal is to take these animals from 500 pounds up to 1,000 pounds or whatever. Maybe even fed weight, maybe even up to 1,300 pounds. And they're going to feed these animals by feeding them the corn that they grow on their field. That's their plan. Right? I mean, now we're talking about, and in reality, we're actually talking about somebody who is not really looking to do drastically better for themselves. They're probably looking to just do okay for a very long period of time. And in terms of business, and in terms of just humanity itself, you don't want to be in a situation where you really want to push yourself to a point where you're actually looking to grow. I'm looking to do better for myself. I want to make myself an extra $2,000 a month, and when I make that extra $2,000 a month, I'm going to put that money into these equitable assets that I can knowledgeably appreciate. I've actually taken a look at these assets, and I have determined that these assets are going to go up in value over a long period of time because of whatever reason. And you've come up with a reasonable idea, and then you stick to the idea no matter what anybody says, because at the end of the day, if you're looking to make whatever, like let's say you actually want whatever, you want to make $2 million like me, you want to make $10 million like me, right? You want to be somebody who's got $10 million. You want to run, me, I don't know anybody that makes $10 million a year other than me. I don't know a single person. All right, not a single one. All right, I don't ask anybody for money I don't ask anybody for money, whatever, right? Money advice. All right, I stick to my cattle farm. All right, I stick to my cattle farm when I take a look at something, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can introduce this idea to y'all, because if I introduce this idea, maybe it will give you a broader understanding of how to accomplish these different things that I do. Right? When I take a look at this, I mean, in reality, I'm just a commodity trader. I'm just a commodity investor. I invest in commodities. I run my own business, and I invest in real estate. That's that. If you take a look at my business in terms of a business aspect, that's what I do. And if you go and you look, and I'm just going to say this in terms of just giving you honest information. If you actually look at somebody and you're like, oh my God, this person has straight number 1 type cattle. They got 250 acres of corn. They got an 18-wheeler. They got a grain bin. They got a feed grinder. They got this massive captivity barn, and they bring in straight number 1 type cattle. And these number 1 type cattle, when you take a look at them, maybe they weigh 550 on the average. Maybe they weigh 500 on the average. And they're looking to raise these animals from 500 pounds up to 850 pounds, 500 pounds to 1,000 pounds. If you take a look at somebody like that, that person is actually closer to being homeless financially than they are to making as much money as me. My 10.5 acre field will produce about $75,000-$100,000 over the next 5 months. I don't have a combine. I don't have a I have one tractor. I have one tractor, and then I have a tiny little tractor that I use if the big tractor goes down. That's the extent of my equipment. Actually, I have another tractor, but the other tractor's real old, and I got it for dirt cheap. So, I really want to get but I started with the well, I mean, if we're gonna go into the whole situation with my equipment, I started off with the old tractor, right? I mean, because I couldn't, when I first started, I didn't want to buy myself a giant tractor because I didn't really have any money for it. But I used the old tractor. I got 1 or 2 seasons out of it, and during that 1 or 2 seasons, I managed to make myself a couple $100,000, right? And now I'm in a situation where my 10.5 acre field, things aren't going incredibly well, things aren't going incredibly bad, things are just kind of going okay, and maybe my 10.5 acre field will make me about $75,000 or $100,000 over the next 5 months. Okay, and so that's the entirety of my situation. I don't have a combine. I don't have I don't have 250 acres of corn or nothing like that. I have 10.5 acres of grass. When the weather is good, I grow the grass and I supplement the animals with a little bit of feed, and then I raise about 110 animals a year. All right, that's my situation. Maybe, you know, if I raise them from 200 pounds up to 800 pounds, maybe I raise about maybe I raise 70 animals a year. All right, that's my situation. And when I do that, like 99% of my net worth comes directly from running cattle. 99% of it. If you take a look at me and you're like, oh, here's a guy with a $7 million net worth. Here's a guy with a $5 million net worth. Like if I have a $5 million net worth, like 4,750,000 of that net worth came directly from me running cattle. I don't make any money on YouTube. There's nothing that, you know, in terms of a monetary sense, nobody has enough money to offer me anything. I don't care about your deal. I mean, I know that sounds horrible, but you got to understand that, you know, even if we just take a look at what I've been talking about, right? I mean, you take a look at somebody and they're like, oh my God, they think it's a good idea to just kind of do okay for a very long period of time. They got all this, you know, and then, right? I mean, a lot of people are actually a net negative. All right, like, you know, and I know that sounds horrible, but I mean, you know, there is no skipping the work. I talk about this all the time. There is no skipping the work. If you actually want to make it to a point where you're, you know, where you can do this, then you're going to have to do the work just like I did. I'm a first generation farmer. All right, I'm a first generation farmer, and, you know, and I mean, the money just is what it is. All right, this 10.5 acre field is going to make me about $75,000, $100,000 over the next 5 months. All right, you know, I don't know what else to, you know, it's money talks. It just is what it is. I mean, there are legitimately some cities where I'll go and I'll take a look at a piece of land in a city and I'm like, man, if I started my business here, I could effectively double the income of the entire city by just starting my business here. I probably make more money than everybody in the city combined. You know, like if I go into there are a lot of cities around here where it's like 200 people, where it's 250 people. That's the population of the city. And it's like, you know, like I probably make more money than everybody in this entire city combined. If I started a business here, I could like effectively double the GDP of the entire city by just starting my own business here. All right, you know, I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. You know, I mean, in all honest to God, I mean, I know that this is going to sound horrible, but I'm just going to say it. If I put $350,000, you know, I've been saying this, if I put $350,000 in a hole right now and lit it on fire, it wouldn't even faze me. It wouldn't even do anything to me. It wouldn't even matter to me. All right. I mean, you know, I probably, you know, there's a very realistic possibility that I make somewhere between 200, on the average, I make about 250, something like that, times more money than the average person. If I go into a city and the median income of the city is 33,000, which is about almost, you know, the median income for the entire country is 40 grand. You know, if I go into a city and the median income of the city is 32,000 and there are, you know, 200 and you know, 50 people that live in that city, and the top 1% of the city makes 200,000, I make more money than the entire city of people combined. All right, because I mean, we're talking about maybe there's, maybe there's really only, if you got a city with 237 people, maybe you got, 75, maybe you got 50 working age males. I make more money than the entire city combined. All right, like, I don't, it just is what it is. Right, I mean, this farm right now, my expenses are sky high, and I anticipate that my expenses are going to be about $2,000 for the month. Right, this farm is going to make me about $75,000, $100,000 over the next 5 months. If you take a look at it for what it is, and you go and you watch somebody and you're like, oh, well, this person has, 100 cattle and they got straight number one type cattle. They got a tractor that looks like a tank. They got a combine. They got 350 acres of corn, and they got this giant grain storage bin, and they got all this equipment, and, and they're running just as many cattle as me. They probably bought their cattle as an entire group, one shebang. Paid a 1+ type of, or if they, paid either straight commodity prices or 1+ type commodity prices on these animals. But I mean, I'm not saying all these people are failures. I mean, but I mean, I'm not saying that these people are failures. All right. I'm not, if anything, you're actually, I've already said that the 3 types of businesses. And when you take a look at it, right, I mean, businesses are ran by people. Businesses don't just exist on their own. And so the business is effectively just a manifestation of the owner. That's why I always say it's very important to take a look at the owner of the business. If the owner of the business looks like an idiot, then the business is going to fail. And if you take a look at it, I mean, 80% of businesses fail. All right, 80% of businesses, it's like, I mean, the only time that okay, if I'm just going to be, and I talk about this all the time, if I'm going to be completely sincere about the whole thing, if I'm just going to be completely sincere about it, I would highly suggest that if you're going to start a business, make sure that you can actually make a large amount of money. You don't want to be in a situation where you start a business because your life is a magical journey and it's been your dream. Nobody cares about your dream. If you can't make money, your life is, and you have a business, your life is going to be miserable. All right, go and buy a business. You can go and buy a business right now. All right, the business is 250,000 net. It's selling for 2.5 times. It's selling for 2.75 times earnings. Right, I mean, you got a $250,000 business. It's selling for 650 grand. The rent for the building is $7,400 a month. Right, I mean, even after you pay for your loan, you still come home with $80,000 a year. Even after you pay for your loan, you come home with $70,000 a year. Even after you pay for your rent and all your expenses, your gas, your light, everything, you pay for your rent, and then you pay for your loan. And a portion of your loan is also equitable, right? You can collateralize a business for a line of credit just like anything else. Businesses are equitable as well. After you've paid for your business loan, after you paid for your rent, after you paid for all your bills, you still come home with $70,000-$80,000. Once you finish paying off your loan, that 60 grand that you were using to pay for your loan is now your money as well. Now you make 130. You make 140. So you say, oh, well, when I buy this business, I'm gonna make this plan for myself to pay off my loan as quickly as possible, because when I pay off my loan as quickly as possible, the cash flow that I was using to pay for the debt service, I get to keep it, and that will effectively double my income. And within the next 5 years, now you went from making $70,000 a year to making $140,000 a year, and you're working the same exact job. You also have a business. That business is evaluated at a multiple of the earnings. If you wanted to go and buy something for whatever reason, you can just collateralize that. I would not, even at that point, I would not go and buy myself a Lamborghini or anything like that. All right, and then congratulations, now you're making $140,000 a year. You didn't have to start anything, you just went and bought one. These businesses are all over the place. Right, buy a business that does not have real estate, because if you buy the real estate, you are going to have to pay a premium, a high premium for that business. Buy a business that does not have any real estate. Rent the real estate. Buy the business and rent the real estate. And when you buy just the business and you're not purchasing the business, or you're not purchasing the real estate, you're just purchasing the business, you're not purchasing the land, then you're going to pay a multiple of the earnings of the business. And usually, if we're talking about a business that is just kind of doing okay for a very long period of time, if the business has just been doing okay for a very long period of time, it's not really done drastically better, it's not really done drastically worse, it's just kind of gone okay for a very long period of time. And it does not have any, the real estate is something that you're going to rent. You're not going to purchase the real estate. You will pay about 3 times the earnings. You'll pay about 3 times the earnings. If you get a good deal, you might even be able to find one for like 2.5 times the earnings. And then if we're talking about like a legitimate zero growth business and you're just going to work the business and whatever, we're talking about like some other, like a pool cleaning business. Then we're talking about 1 times earnings. But if we're talking about like a restaurant or something, or like, if you want to go and you want to own a restaurant or whatever, you want to own a lawn care service or whatever, you can buy these businesses at like 3 times earnings. All right, and then you can go and you can start effectively making money tomorrow. You don't have to, because here's the thing, like if you start a business and whatever, it was my dream and I'm going to go and start a business. First of all, nobody cares about your dream. There's an 80% chance that you're going to turn into a bum. Right, you're going to be borderline homeless forever, and then you're going to struggle with this thing for no reason, and then you're going to effectively bankrupt when you're 75. All right, but if you go and you buy a business and the business is being sold and it's being sold at a multiple of the earnings, the business has already been evaluated, it's already equitable, and now you're just purchasing the cash flow. Right, now you don't have to worry about it. Now you just show up at the business tomorrow, you start running the thing, and you should start making your money. Congratulations, you're a business owner. Have fun. You really want to run a business, and why would you want to run, if you want to run a business, go for it. If that's what you want to do, but you should also consider the possibility that if you just got yourself a nice job, you wouldn't have to work 7 days a week. You wouldn't have to work 14 hours a day. You should consider that too. All right, because if you buy a business like me, I live where I work, and I work 7 days a week. All right, I work on this thing effectively from the day, from the morning, from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to sleep. I'm working on this thing. What am I going to do with my business? Where am I going to go with my business? What does the commodity market look like today? What do I anticipate that my animals weigh? How much am I going to feed them? I want to go and get myself a new line of credit, and then I want to take I need to start liquidating these animals when this happens. I work on this thing 7 days a week, from the moment I get up to the moment I go to sleep, every single day, 365 days a year. And it's like, are you sure you actually want to do that? I mean, and if you do, then go and have fun. But there's a very real possibility where if you just got a job and you worked for 40 hours a week, and you took, your money and whatever, and you invested that money into something that you believed was, a good investment, it's equitable, large pool of equity, going to appreciate in the future, and you just took your money, you would make just as much money as the business owner. All right, a majority of businesses do not turn out in a good situation. And this is a very good example. If we're just going to compare, I'm not going to say compare, because, if you're in this, all right, I'm not throwing shade on anybody. It just is what it is. It's just honest information. And I'm just going to leave it out for what it is. I'm just going to leave it out there for what it is. If you see somebody who's farming, and you take a look at them, because me, at the end of the day, I am a farmer to such a capacity that I actually managed to get into the the very, 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 very top percentiles of the entire U.S. economy. I may be one of the most capable farmers on the entire planet, if we just take a look at it in terms of a monetary standard. All right, I might legitimately do one of the best in terms of just results. All right, it just is what it is. I don't know what else to tell you. If you take a look at a farmer and they got a big old barn, they're bringing in straight number 1 type cattle, number 1+ type cattle. They got long strings of them. They probably bought them as a bunch, maybe even paid, whatever, right? And then they're bringing them in at 550 pounds. They're growing their own corn, and to harvest that corn, they're having to run a combine through it. They got 250 acres of it. Right, they got 250 acres of corn, but about 50 acres of their corn is just no good. Right, 50 acres of their corn, maybe it's just no good. It's not really any good. Maybe they got, maybe on 200 acres, they got maybe on 150 acres, they got 175 bushels, and then on 50 acres, they got 225 bushels, and then on 50 acres, they got 150. So they just averaged out at about 175 to 200 bushels an acre. So that's what they harvested for their corn. They ran a combine through it. They put it on a big old grain wagon, took it over to a grain bin with their 18-wheeler, and then they dried it, and then they put it in a feed grinder, chopped up their silage, put it under a giant tarp, and then now that we got all this stuff, now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna buy myself a long string of straight number 1+ type cattle. I'm gonna buy about 100 of them, and those are gonna be the 100 animals that I raise for the entire year. I raise, and then they take those animals from 550 up to whatever, maybe up to even fed weight, maybe even up to 1,500 pounds, whatever it may be. And then it's like, now, I make more money than that person, and I'm on a 10.5 acre field. All right, I run just as many cattle on my 10.5 acre field. I don't have any of that equipment. I just put my cattle on grass. And for the feed, if I need to put them on feed, I just get buckets. I just get 5-gallon buckets, and I put it in, and I just feed it to them. That's what I do. And this farm is going to make somewhere around $75,000 and $100,000 over the next 5 months. Yes, well, they left a little bit of feed left, so that's good. But I mean, is it enough for them to have lunch? No, not really. But I mean, they left a little bit of feed left, so that's good. I want to get these animals to a point where they're eating about 20 buckets, and when they get to about eating 20 buckets, I'm gonna start selling the biggest animals. And then they're going to go back there and they're going to chew on the grass, right? I got a little bit of grass back there. I mean, it's too cold for the grass to really grow, but they're going to go and chew on it anyway. So, I mean, they're going to be eating for the rest of the day. So, I want to get these animals to a point where they're eating about 20 buckets a day. And you see that animal in the very back right there? She's actually bloating a little bit. So, that's actually not good. And so I'm going to keep track of that. I really don't want these animals bloating. And, but that's how I run my business. I plant my grass. I got one tractor. I plant my grass. You know, I don't have a combine. I don't grow 250 acres of corn to feed 100 cattle. I don't do any of that stuff. If I need a little bit of feed, I'll take a look at the commodity markets and then I'll just order it. And then if I need to feed the animals, I'll just get 5-gallon buckets and I'll put the feed in the 5-gallon buckets and then I'll just pour it out for them. And so that's how I do things. And my farm, if you take a look at my farm and then you take a look at a farm like that, that person is actually closer to being homeless than they are to doing, in terms of a financial standard, that person is actually closer to being homeless than to making as much money as me. If we're just going to be completely honest and just take a look at the numbers for what they are, my 10.5 acre field is going to make about $100,000 over the next 5 months. So, I mean, I'm just going to leave that information and you can do with it whatever you want, but you should learn to consider the money. Consider the money, all right? It just is what it is, all right? Me, I farm I live where I work. I live where I work. I work on this thing 7 days a week. I work from the moment I get up to the moment I go to sleep. And if you take a look at my results, I'm in the top 0.00001% to top 0.00001% of the entire U.S. economy. All right, if I took 350 grand and I put that in a hole in the ground right now and lit it on fire, it wouldn't even do anything to me. It wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't even faze me. All right, and just to end things on a different note, I'm actually going to go and take a look at a couple of different properties today. I'm going to go and take a look at a couple of different properties today. I found 2 of them that I want to go look at. And that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.